You are probably tired after doing stuff and playing games throughout the day and now want some relax. Don't worry. Here's all types of zombies in Dead Rails explained to you in soothing voice of Banker Zombie. So sit back, relax, and drift slowly to sleep. It began long before the trains. Long before the towers pulsed blue in the dead of night, and long before the black blood of progress seeped into the heart of every nation. The infected, or what we now call the undead, didn't simply appear. They were shaped by hands both scientific and misguided, forged in the shadow of Nikola Tesla's greatest creation, the electromagnetic grid. In the years leading up to 1899, newspapers spoke quietly of strange illnesses, people who wandered at night and couldn't remember the morning, miners who disappeared in the tunnels only to return days later with glassy eyes and shaking limbs. But the headlines never reached the front page. Not yet. The world had other things to praise: machines that ran without coal, wires that danced with silent lightning, towers that hummed like gods. Tesla's core project was meant to revolutionize energy: clean, free, and infinite. A web of towers scattered across continents built to transmit energy through the very air. But there was a cost. The system worked, but not perfectly. Prolonged exposure to the energy fields altered biology. Subtle at first, nervous systems misfired, heartbeats changed rhythm, dreams became vivid and strange. In isolated towns, people began to vanish. Those who returned were no longer whole. The infection wasn't a virus, not in the traditional sense. There was no bacteria, no parasite to isolate. It was radiation, frequency, a change in how the body processed thought. Some claimed it wasn't a sickness, but a signal, one that rewired the brain from the inside out. Others whispered that it was never an accident, that Tesla had uncovered something buried in the field, something that didn't belong to us. What we now call zombies began to appear at the fringes, lumbering, silent, cold-skinned beings that didn't bleed the same way we do. Their veins pulsed faintly with static. Their eyes sometimes flashed a dull blue. They did not hunt for food. They hunted for disruption. Anything that threatened the grid was met with resistance. A farm that failed to pay its dues was swarmed. A village that disabled its tower went dark and never lit up again. The early infected were treated as anomalies, military units were deployed, towns were sealed off, and Tesla vanished. His name disappeared from the documents. No one knows if he fled, was taken, or became something else entirely. What we do know is that the infection spread silently and without mercy. People turned, sometimes overnight, sometimes after years of exposure. There was no cure. Only the train tracks and the constant hum of the grid kept the truly corrupted at bay. It's believed the infection has several stages. The earliest is almost invisible: fatigue, disorientation, mild memory loss. Then the hallucinations begin. Time fractures. The infected begin to hear whispers. They lose language. Their skin cools, their breath slows, but they do not die. They become something else, something caught between life and code. Their minds, some say, are uploaded into the grid, leaving behind a body that's just echo. The infection isn't uniform. It's shaped by location, by energy density, by age, and emotion. Some infected remain passive until provoked. Others mutate violently. Some scream, some hum, and some, the worst of them, remember just enough of who they were to still feel pain. By the turn of the century, the world above the tracks had fallen. Governments collapsed, cities became shadows of their former selves. The trains, massive armored, self-sustaining engines, became the last refuge of humanity. The tracks are laced with copper, reinforced with Tesla coils. The constant motion prevents corruption from building, but if a train stops too long, they find it, and they wait. This is where our story begins, not in a lab, not in a tower, but on the edge of a decaying world where the dead are not buried. They are studied, tracked, and feared, and they're evolving. By the time the infected were acknowledged publicly, the damage was irreversible. Governments issued vague warnings about electrical disturbances and grid fatigue, but the reality on the ground was far worse. Entire districts were being evacuated, not because of war or famine, but because people inside had stopped staying dead. The earliest documented outbreak was recorded in a classified dispatch known only as DR-01, later leaked under the name the 1899 Illness Paper. The report described a mining colony near what's now called the Western Spire, a transmission tower embedded deep in the mountains. Workers reported hallucinations, seizures, and eventually disappearances. When a recon team arrived, they found the mine abandoned, but equipment was still running. The logs stopped mid-entry, as if the writers had stood up and simply walked away. Except one. A final entry scrawled in the margins read only, "They woke up humming." To this day, no one knows what that means. Theories spread like wildfire, especially among the rail crews and signal engineers. Some believe the infection is a failed experiment in immortality, that Tesla had developed not just a power grid, but a consciousness grid, and the infected are its earliest broken downloads. Others argue the dead are not sick, they're hijacked, controlled by a rogue signal, a frequency that speaks only to those exposed long enough to hear it. A few researchers claim the infected are protecting something, that they're not attacking aimlessly, but following an unseen code, something embedded in the pulse of the grid. Those who try to decode the signal either disappear or lose their minds. There's even speculation that the infected are trying to build something, patterns etched into their movements, into how they cluster near towers, into the glyphs burned into their skin by pure current exposure. Something is guiding them. But not all theories are scientific. In the more isolated communities, the towns that still speak in whispers and carry relics instead of radios, the infected are believed to be echoes of sin. Punishment for technological pride, a reckoning brought on by tapping into forces beyond our understanding. These places shun power, avoid the rails, and claim to see faces in the lightning. One particularly old legend describes the dead as those who refuse the signal, cursed to walk until the grid burns itself out. Whether metaphor or madness, no one can say. The grid itself is unstable. The towers hum constantly, discharging blue arcs into the sky. Birds don't fly near them. Water tastes strange in their shadow. And yet, these towers are the only thing keeping the infection from swallowing the world. They interrupt the signal, or perhaps amplify it to a point where it becomes unbearable. Either way, infected seem to hesitate near towers, only entering the radius when they outnumber the defenses 10 to 1. In response to the growing threat, what remained of human leadership enacted the locomotive doctrine, a protocol that prioritized mobile settlements over static ones. Massive trains were retrofitted with living quarters, laboratories, armories. New railways were laid, zigzagging away from tower clusters to minimize exposure. Entire cities were restructured to become mobile outposts. And every child born aboard these trains is taught one rule before anything else: never leave the track. Never trust the silence. The infected are drawn to stillness, to disconnection. They arrive when the humming stops. The theory is that they sense electromagnetic dead zones, like sharks sensing blood in water. This is why even the smallest outposts maintain a local coil. It's not for power, it's for survival. Perhaps most disturbing is this: infected have been seen reacting to music, to sound. There are reports of groups pausing in unison when a train bell rings, of individual zombies twitching when old songs play through static. One engineer swore he saw a fast zombie cry, just for a second, when a recording of a lullaby played over a busted speaker. Was it memory, conditioning, or just the grid, mimicking what it thinks a human should feel? The truth is, we still don't know what they are: corpses, uploads, warnings, or all of the above. But what we do know is this: they are not mindless. They do not wander. They seek. And more, they seem to be seeking us. The infection isn't just a threat. It's a reflection of what we tried to become, of the cost of control, and maybe of something older than even the grid itself. You know you've entered a dead zone the moment the standard zombie appears, not because of how they move, but because of how they stop. Still, silent, staring. Sometimes they'll tilt their heads slowly, as if recognizing something deep in your bones. Other times they simply stand, as if waiting for a command only they can hear. These are the most common variant of the infected, but standard is misleading. There's nothing ordinary about them. Their skin is pallid, grayish, sometimes blistered or marked with deep electrical burns. The eyes are dull but not lifeless. They flicker occasionally with a faint blue glow, echoing the electromagnetic grid they were born from. They're slow, unarmed, unintelligent at first glance, but that's what makes them dangerous. Survivors often underestimate them, and in this world, underestimation is fatal, because the standard zombie doesn't exist to chase you. It exists to alert the others. If you're close enough to hear it groan, it's already too late. These zombies operate on basic sensory triggers: sound, light, and electromagnetic shifts. They appear to cluster near power faults or broken rails, suggesting they're drawn to places where the grid is weak. Some theories suggest they are part of the grid now, biological extensions of its signal. When one zombie sees you, it pings others. The reaction is almost hive-like. What sets the standard zombie apart isn't just its consistency, but its unpredictability. It may shuffle toward you for several minutes, pause, and then veer in a different direction entirely. Not because it's confused, but because something else is calling it. Maybe another human, maybe a burst of energy, maybe something deeper. Interestingly, many show signs of preserved clothing. You'll see miners' vests, old sheriff coats, or torn formal wear clinging to their frames. It implies they were ordinary people once, before the infection took over. Some carry trinkets, a broken watch, a child's ribbon, an identification tag, scorched and unreadable. These artifacts don't seem random. The infected don't let go of them. Whether out of instinct, ritual, or some remnant of self, no one knows. Researchers aboard the trains have tried capturing standard zombies for study. Most experiments fail. The infected don't survive long away from the open air and pulse of the towers. But one thing is consistent: their neural tissue is altered, not decayed. They are not decomposing corpses. They are rewritten humans, reprogrammed by frequencies we still don't fully understand. Some say you can reason with them, that if you speak softly or carry an object from their former life, they pause. There are unconfirmed stories of survivors who made it past entire hordes by humming a lullaby. It might be myth, or it might be evidence of something worse, that they know what they've become. Standard zombies are found near early game regions used as pacing tools, but they're not just filler. They're the foundation. They anchor the undead world. The moment you stop fearing them is the moment they overwhelm you. They don't sprint, they don't leap, they just come. Slowly, certainly, without mercy. And if you listen closely, sometimes they hum the sound of the rails. They come out of nowhere. 1 second, the fog is thick and still. The next, something darts through it like a shadow sharpened to a blade. You don't hear the fast zombie until it's nearly too late. But you'll always feel it. A sudden pressure in your chest, that primal voice whispering, "Run." In contrast to the slow-moving standard infected, fast zombies are agile, relentless, and terrifyingly aware of their surroundings. Their behavior doesn't follow the same broken, lumbering patterns. They crouch, they lean, they watch. Some have even been observed circling players before striking, as if assessing threat levels. Where the standard zombie feels like a malfunctioning human system, the fast zombie feels more like a predator, a weapon, something made, not born. They're often seen hunched forward, twitching with short spasms, like they're still adapting to the physical strain of their acceleration. Their muscles are visibly overstretched, skin tight around tendons, sometimes tearing during sudden movements. They aren't just fast, they're unstable. One of the most unnerving aspects is their sound. Not the scream or growl, but the way it builds. It starts low, a kind of static hiss, like tuning into the wrong frequency. And then it surges, louder and sharper, until it's almost unbearable, a screech mixed with broken metal and rage. It's not just a sound of attack, it's designed to paralyze. Some theorists suggest that fast zombies are a second-generation mutation, not infected by the original pulse, but adapted to it. Their biology is sharper, leaner. They're often younger in appearance, suggesting faster assimilation rates in more recent outbreaks. This adds to a chilling theory that the infection is learning, optimizing. There are some who believe fast zombies were once runners, couriers, rail workers, maybe even soldiers, infected while in motion. And because the grid reprograms, not destroys, their instinct to run became weaponized, twisted into something brutal. Environmentally, they appear more frequently near mid-zone relay stations and fractured tower zones, places where the signal is distorted rather than strong or absent. This suggests that fast zombies thrive in instability. They hunt in chaos. Unlike the standard, who may pause and stare, fast zombies don't wait. If you're seen, they sprint. If you're heard, they charge. Their intelligence is minimal. They don't open doors, they don't climb with purpose, but their aggression more than compensates. Alone, they're lethal. In groups, they're apocalyptic. Interestingly, fast zombies rarely vocalize unless they've locked onto a target. This leads to the chilling reality. When they're silent, they're searching. And they don't search like the others. They listen. They seem attuned to electrical noise, the hum of a rail coil, the crackle of a broken lantern, even the quiet whir of your motion sensors. That's why when you power down in a fog zone, you hold your breath. There are rare reports, maybe rumors, of fast zombies freezing mid-sprint when exposed to direct coil bursts, as if something in their system misfires when overloaded. Engineers call this the snapback. But don't rely on it. The margin for error is a second. And when the average one covers 20 meters in under 3, hesitation is death. Cosmetically, you'll notice many wear-torn uniforms or urban wear, indicative of city zones pre-collapse. Some even bear fragments of personal electronics melted into their skin, a headset, a fitness tracker, a broken PDA fused to the wrist. All dead tech, all pulsing faintly with static energy. And that's the most disturbing part. The closer you look, the more they resemble us. Not shambling corpses, not soulless monsters, but something twisted just enough to make you question where the line between human and infected really begins. They don't just represent speed, they represent evolution. The grid's version of better. These aren't just zombies. They're scouts, hunters, winnings. If the standard is what happens when the grid reanimates, the fast is what happens when it refines. You don't fight a fast zombie, you run, or you die. There's a different kind of silence in the mines, one that hums like the ground itself is remembering what was buried, and then it happens. A low, dragging clank, a distant, metallic rattle. The hiss of old fuses, barely holding back the spark. That's when you know the miner has arrived. Often referred to by survivors as the dynamite zombie, this variant isn't fast. It doesn't stalk you with predatory grace. But what it lacks in speed, it makes up for in sheer catastrophic danger. Because unlike the others, this one explodes. Literally. The miner is a rare but unforgettable encounter. Bloated and stiff, often hunched from years spent underground, its silhouette is unmistakable. A large figure weighed down by rusted mining gear fused into its body. Helmets, old carbide lamps still dimly glowing, dynamite sticks strapped crudely across its chest, some lit, some just there, hanging, waiting. These zombies appear to be former tunnel workers or excavation teams consumed during the early spread of the grid's influence in the subterranean rail systems. And that tells us something important. The infection didn't just spread through the surface, it dug, it crawled down into the deepest parts of the infrastructure, into the ancient, buried systems no one talks about. When a miner zombie detects a player, it begins a slow approach. There's no sprint, no erratic chase, just an eerie, trudging inevitability. You'd almost think it's defective, but then you realize why it's coming. It doesn't want to grab you. It doesn't want to eat you. It wants to get close enough to detonate. The detonation is massive, enough to down multiple players, collapse tunnels, or destroy escape paths entirely. It turns tight corridors into death traps and open fields into shattered zones of rubble. And worse, it often takes others with it. Miners don't always wander alone. If they blow near standard infected, they create chain reactions. Chaos. The explosion isn't just physical either. Based on reports from engineers, the detonation emits a pulse, a spike in electromagnetic energy that disrupts rail signals, wipes surveillance feeds, and sometimes even calls other infected from nearby zones. It's a flare, a beacon, a siren. But here's the haunting question. Do they know? Because unlike other types, the miner zombie occasionally stops moving, as if assessing its proximity to you, judging whether the explosion is worth it. Some swear they've seen one hesitate, shift its weight, then veer away, only to return once the player was more vulnerable. Tactical thinking, or just mechanical stuttering? No one's sure, but if the grid is evolving, then sacrifice might be a calculated tool. Their origins point to a period around the 1899 expansion mentioned in the game's lore, a rapid underground railway build-out that collapsed under mysterious circumstances. It's during this time that the illness, as recorded in the newspaper clippings found throughout the game, began affecting deep workers first. Eyes bleeding, skin fracturing, hearing voices. Miners were the first to vanish, not die, but disappear into the tunnels they dug. Some believe they never left, that they were consumed by something buried far deeper than the rail towers, something older, something sentient. And the explosion? It may not be a symptom. It might be a command, a self-destruct trigger issued when containment fails. The gear on the miner's body tells a story too. Many wear outdated equipment, gas masks from the early 20th century, mining hoods marked with company logos long since erased from history. Some are scorched, burned into their flesh. Others still leak small bursts of gas or emit sparks, suggesting constant internal friction. They are bombs, walking, waiting bombs. But the dynamite isn't always lit, and that's what's disturbing. It means some of them choose when to ignite. The practical advice is simple: avoid tight spaces, maintain line of sight, and whatever you do, don't let them flank. Because once they start hissing, once that soft crackle begins like a match striking inside their chest, you've got maybe 5 seconds to run or accept the blast. The miner zombie represents a terrifying escalation in the infection's logic. It weaponizes self-destruction, turns memory, the memory of labor, of tunnels, of silent revolutions beneath the earth, into something volatile, deadly. They don't come to chase, they come to end everything. One spark, one breath, one step too close. That's all it takes. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It's the kind that presses against your ears, too still, too tight, too intentional. It's not the absence of sound, but the presence of something holding its breath, waiting. That's when you realize you're not alone. That's when you realize the stalker is watching. Unlike the common infected who stumble openly across the terrain, stalkers are defined not by how they move, but by how they don't. They linger, they observe, and they remember. They don't rush you the moment you're spotted. They don't howl to announce their presence. They simply stand somewhere just out of sight. You catch a glimpse, a pale blur in the fog, a silhouette behind rusted machinery. The moment you turn to face it, it's gone. No footsteps, no sound, only the cold dread of knowing it was just there. This is the calling card of a stalker, psychological warfare through absence. The Dead Rails wiki doesn't list stalkers as high threat due to physical damage, but that's a mistake. Their real weapon is fear, not the jump scare kind, the kind that settles in over time, the kind that turns confidence into paranoia, the kind that forces you to keep checking your six every few steps. They're taller than most infected, lanky, almost too thin, like they were starved before death. Their limbs don't swing like a human's, they dangle, as if they're trying to remember how to use them. Their faces are either hidden under wrappings or disfigured beyond recognition. No two are alike, but all share one common trait: eyes that do not blink. Some stalkers are believed to have been observers in their past lives: scouts, technicians, even railroad inspectors. People trained to watch, to take note, to gather information without being seen. And when the infection rewrote their minds, that instinct didn't vanish. It was amplified. Now they memorize. It's said that stalkers don't just detect sound, they map it. They learn your routes. Watch your routines, and sometimes mimic them. One report details a squad of players returning to the same checkpoint every 15 minutes. By the fourth pass, a stalker was already there, standing still, wearing the same class uniform as the leader of the squad. A glitch? A coincidence? Or something far more intelligent? Their behavior defies the logic of basic AI. For example, if you shine a light on one, they won't always retreat. Sometimes they freeze. Hold completely still like a predator caught mid-step, and if you blink just once, they're closer. Not dramatically, just enough to make you question whether they moved at all. Some players report hearing whispering when stalkers are nearby, but not environmental whispering. Your own voice, replayed back at you in short, glitchy fragments, as if the entity is listening, recording, then playing it back through your own comms. It's unclear whether this is psychological manipulation or literal sound replication through old analog radio signals, but the result is the same: doubt, isolation. Even more disturbing are the moments when they do nothing, when they simply stand far off in the mist. Not approaching, not hiding, just waiting. You fire at them. Nothing. You flash them. Nothing. They don't react to provocation like other zombies. They react to pattern, to habit, to your fear. Lore-wise, stalkers are tied to locations rich in old surveillance gear and black box rail control nodes. They often linger near map zones that used to house signal repeaters, suggesting their behavior may be rooted in corrupted observation systems. Imagine a creature half living, half replaying a million hours of surveillance footage, confused but determined. That's what a stalker feels like. In appearance, they sometimes wear cloaks, worker jackets, or even officer coats from the pre collapse era. The clothing is often burned, brittle, or fused into their skin. Some even seem to have functional tech embedded into their torsos, blinking red lights, wires protruding, cracked lenses hanging from the side of their heads. These aren't enhancements, they're remnants of identity, pieces of who they were, frozen mid function by the pulse of the grid. The terrifying part is their restraint. A stalker will often follow you for long stretches without ever engaging. But when it does, it's instant. No warning, no buildup, just that flash of movement across your peripheral and a sudden burst of static in your earpiece. By the time you process it, you're already bleeding. Some call them cowards, others call them ghosts. But those who've encountered them more than once, the veterans, call them the memory. Because stalkers don't act like monsters, they act like something trapped between decisions. Something stuck watching a world that no longer makes sense. Something left behind with just enough thought to remember what they lost. And maybe that's why they don't attack right away. Maybe they're still deciding. One player captured footage, or claimed to, of a stalker kneeling over a fallen NPC, not attacking it, but touching its face. Slowly, curiously, as if trying to understand what happened. The footage was corrupted before extraction. But the story remains, passed around as a chilling reminder. Not every entity in Dead Rails kills to feed. Some kill to feel. Stalkers aren't your greatest physical threat, but they are your most personal. They don't scream. They don't rush. They don't alert others. They wait. And when the moment is right, when your guard slips, your stamina fades, your confidence falters, they step forward and make you regret ever thinking silence was safe. There's a chill that creeps in, low to the ground, the kind that makes you glance down just a moment too late. That's where crawlers live, at the edges of your vision, scuttling through shadows, always below the surface of your awareness. Unlike the towering figures that lumber in the ruins, crawlers are grotesque distortions of humanity's desperation. Once human, now reduced to a writhing, malformed mass, their bodies have been twisted by infection and decay into something barely recognizable. They don't walk upright, they don't even crawl like an animal. They drag themselves, pulling with spindly arms while legs drag uselessly behind. Limbs that seem to twitch involuntarily, as if they remember movement but have forgotten grace. Their skin is pale, sickly, translucent in places, almost revealing the network of veins beneath, pulsing faintly as if some part of their body still fights to survive. They are the lowest of the infected hierarchy, scavengers who lurk in tunnels, derelict railcars, and crumbling stations waiting for any sign of life. In Dead Rails, crawlers represent the insidious spread of the infection beneath the surface. They are the unseen danger in the damp corners, the creaking floorboards, and the shattered glass. Players often overlook them, focused on more visible threats, only to be caught off guard by their sudden, rapid assault. Unlike the more predictable zombies, crawlers have a hunting style uniquely terrifying. They use the environment to their advantage, climbing walls, hanging from ceilings, squeezing through narrow gaps no one else can fit. Their movement is erratic, sometimes almost mechanical, as if controlled by an external will. They swarm quickly in groups, coordinating attacks that can overwhelm even seasoned players. The wiki notes multiple variants of crawlers, some faster, some more resilient, some even capable of emitting a disturbing shriek that disorients players and draws others in. One rare variant, known as the Screamer Crawler, has patches of glowing fungus on its back which pulse rhythmically, casting an eerie light in dark tunnels. Their shriek is not just noise, it's a weaponized sound wave that temporarily scrambles audio perception and communication, leaving victims vulnerable. The origins of crawlers seem tied to the early days of the outbreak underground. According to lore, as the infection spread through the rail tunnels, many workers tried to escape by crawling through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. Some succumbed to infection mid-escape, transforming into these nightmarish beings. The cramped, suffocating environment of the tunnels may have shaped their form, evolving the infected to navigate tight spaces and ambush from unexpected angles. Beyond their physical danger, crawlers embody the creeping dread of infection that spreads unnoticed. They are the embodiment of rot beneath the surface, reminding players that the threat is not always in front of them, but often below. Players learn quickly that combat against crawlers requires a mix of patience and aggression. A single crawler can be manageable, but a pack can quickly trap and incapacitate. They often leap from unexpected places, grabbing ankles or dragging players into the dark where other infected wait. Weapon choice matters. Fast, precise strikes or area effect attacks are recommended, while slow, heavy blows risk leaving you exposed. Interestingly, some players speculate that crawlers might retain fragments of human memory. You think you've seen the worst of it. The common infected, the crawlers, even the stalkers who linger too long. But then the lights flicker, the air goes still, and something far more intelligent steps into the darkness. These aren't your average threats. These are the rare entities of Dead Rails, powerful, unique, and deeply rooted in the game's unsettling lore. Let's begin with a figure wrapped in myth and mystery, Nikola Tesla. Yes, that Nikola Tesla, or at least something that bears his name and appearance. Within the Dead Rails lore, Tesla is said to have returned not as a man, but as a construct, a fractured echo of a once brilliant mind entangled in the corruption of the grid. He's not a zombie. He's not entirely human either. What he is a riddle, a ghost of electricity and memory, wrapped in a tailored suit that crackles with static. In-game, Tesla appears infrequently and never in the same place twice. Some players report hearing a low-frequency hum before he arrives. Others speak of their flashlight glitching out moments before spotting him at the edge of a tunnel, arms behind his back, staring silently. He never charges, never speaks, but those who approach too closely report a sudden jolt, a burst of electric force that knocks them off their feet. And then, he's gone. He's tied deeply to the lore surrounding the grid, the semi-sentient power network that once ran the entire rail system. Some believe Tesla was uploaded into the grid during its early experiments. Others say he's a fabrication, a hallucination created by the grid itself to lure players into dangerous zones. But the fact remains, when you see Tesla, something is about to go wrong. Very wrong. Then there's the Behemoth Miner, sometimes referred to as the Dynamite Carrier. This entity is a walking contradiction. Slow and deliberate, yet capable of catastrophic damage. It wears a corrupted mining suit, dented, rusted, and fused to its bloated flesh. Tubes of old detonator fluid hang from its back, leaking sparks. Dynamite charges line its belt like trophies from another era. The ground trembles slightly as it walks. Unlike the quick ambush style of crawlers, the miner warns you. You hear it first. A distant rumble, a dragging metallic clank. If you ignore it, it will find you. And when it does, it doesn't chase you down. It forces you to come to it. That's the danger. Its massive frame is rigged with volatile explosives. Shoot carelessly, and you risk setting off a chain reaction that destroys everything nearby. In combat, the Behemoth Miner isn't just an obstacle, it's a choice. Engage from range, and you might trigger the blast. Get too close, and you might be caught in its crushing swing. The safest strategy is evasion, or leading it into other enemy groups to weaponize its destruction. But that's easier said than done. Some suspect the miner was a real person once, a legendary demolitions expert during the early construction of the deeper tunnels. Perhaps he volunteered to stay behind when the infection hit, rigging charges to seal access. Perhaps he died there. Or perhaps something found his suit, climbed inside, and kept moving. Let's talk about crawler hybrids next, a more recent addition hinted at in data leaks and unfinished files. These aren't standard crawlers, they're fused entities, part crawler, part electrical conduit. Their backs spark and twitch with exposed wire. Their fingers are sharpened bits of broken rail spikes, fused directly into flesh. They don't just slash, they conduct. Attacks from these hybrids can cause disorientation effects, similar to flashbangs or EMP bursts, making your vision blur and audio distort. Some believe the grid is using them to experiment, testing bioelectric interface prototypes. If true, these hybrids may be just the first wave. One player described them as broken battery packs, crawling like they're looking for a socket. That imagery alone is enough to haunt you. Finally, we can't ignore the entity known only as the Observer. Very little is known about it. Some players argue it doesn't exist, but files hidden in the game reference a Class O anomaly that cannot be killed, only watched. Supposedly, it appears in the reflections of train windows. You don't see it directly. You see it behind you, even if nothing is there when you turn around. Some rare footage shows an entity standing on top of a stationary train, watching silently as the player walks past, yet casting no shadow, leaving no heat trace. It never moves, never blinks. But if you aim at it for too long, your screen glitches, your UI fragments, and the next time you reload, your position has changed. It's unclear whether the observer is real or a meta feature, but it represents a terrifying idea, an entity not bound to the world, but to you, watching how you play, judging. These rare entities each bring something unique, not just mechanically, but emotionally. They challenge the way you move, think, and engage with the world. They aren't just enemies, they're warnings, artifacts, clues that the infection is more than just biological. It's spiritual, it's mechanical, it's personal, and worst of all, it's learning. The moment you hear the hollow echo of metal grinding against bone, you know what's coming. A figure far larger than the standard infected moves with purpose, slow, methodical, but unstoppable. That's the Ironclad, a walking fortress of decay and reinforced steel, one of the most formidable threats in the world of Dead Rails. The Ironclad isn't like other zombies. It wasn't just a random victim of the outbreak. It was prepared. At least, it was armored before death, and that armor is now fused to what's left of its corpse. Many believe ironclads were security personnel, riot officers or private guards deployed to contain the early stages of the infection. Judging by the gear they wear, it's clear they were once outfitted for control, not chaos. Full chest plating, reinforced leg armor, bulletproof visors, taser units fused into their skeletal remains. But now, those defenses protect something far more dangerous than a man. What makes the Ironclad terrifying isn't just the physical defense, it's their relentless nature. They do not chase, they advance. There's no frantic rage like the crawlers or frenzied screeches like the stalkers. Instead, Ironclads march forward, absorbing bullets, fire, melee hits, anything you throw at them. And if you're not careful, they will corner you. In close quarters, they're lethal. Their attacks aren't wild, they're deliberate. Each swing of their reinforced arm can send players flying, breaking stamina and defenses in one blow. They often carry remnants of riot gear, broken shields, electric batons still sparking, or even fragments of containment doors bolted to their arms. And these aren't cosmetic. They affect gameplay. They can deflect attacks, knock weapons from your hands, interrupt reloads with well-timed charges. A unique feature of Ironclads is their adaptive armor degradation. In Dead Rails, if you target specific points on their body, you can break their plating off over time. This isn't easy. It requires coordination, accuracy, and sustained firepower. But once the plating is gone, their underlying weaknesses, bloated infection sacs, exposed ribcage, spinal damage, can be exploited. Players often share chilling encounters, moments where a firefight against weaker zombies is suddenly interrupted by a loud, echoing thud. One stomp, two, then silence. And and then the ironclad appears in the hallway, dragging a riot shield, eyes glowing faintly behind a shattered helmet. One theory from the community is that ironclads don't just wear their armor, they've grown into it. The infection adapted to it. There are reports of fungal veins wrapping through the plating, almost reinforcing it organically. The armor and the zombie aren't two things anymore. They're one. And that's what makes them so hard to kill. And we haven't even talked about what happens when you try to run. You don't run from the ironclad, not in the usual sense. You retreat, you reposition, because once it's on your track, it doesn't stop. It doesn't forget. It learns the layout and it remembers you. Ironclads are most commonly found in sealed transport corridors, rusted holding lines where failed military intervention left behind more than just debris. These areas are dim, filled with crates, disused riot cages, and shattered surveillance systems. This is their hunting ground, a place once meant for containment, now ruled by what was supposed to be contained. One of the Ironclad's most unnerving features is its ability to detect vibration. It doesn't rely purely on sight. Running, climbing, slamming doors, it can detect those sounds and respond. Players who've tried to stealth past one know the risk. You make a noise, and the next thing you hear is the screech of metal against the tunnel walls. That's the ironclad dragging its armored shoulder as it turns the corner. Fighting one solo is near suicide unless you're fully prepared. Even then, most players recommend luring it into specific environmental hazards: active power boxes, broken hydraulic presses, narrow corridors where movement is limited. One particular method is using explosive barrels to strip its armor, but it takes precise timing. The explosion doesn't kill it, it just opens it up, and that's when you see what's underneath. The ironclad's body has long since decomposed in places, but it's been replaced. Muscles replaced with corded infection, organs with pulsing sacs of blackened fluid. Some report hearing a heartbeat sound when close to one, slow, thunderous, irregular. It's as if the armor is keeping it alive unnaturally. Or maybe it's the infection, animating it beyond logic. A rare variant, sometimes called the Iron Bastion, is rumored to appear during late game events or in infection overdrive zones. These versions are even more fortified. Their armor fused with train scrap, bolts of track steel, and even decommissioned weaponry. One report claimed a Bastion variant carried a non-functional railgun as a melee club. Whether myth or glitch, it tells you how legendary these entities have become. And yet, despite all this terror, there's something tragic about the Ironclad. The logs left behind by field medics scattered through the game world mention containment crews who volunteered to lock themselves in when the infection hit. Some believed they could hold the line. Some may have succeeded, for a while. But when the grid failed, they were left behind. Their armor now keeps moving, not out of duty, out of infection, out of something deeper, something unfinished. Players have even speculated that a few ironclads still have cognitive echoes, fragments of memory. There's an instance where one ironclad pauses in front of a blood-stained ID badge and simply stares. No attack, no reaction. Then, without warning, it turns and leaves. Whether that's AI design or intentional storytelling is unclear, but it adds to their depth. These aren't just tanks. These are stories, wrapped in steel, walking nightmares bound to rails they once protected. There's something eerily symbolic about the sheriff zombie. A figure once entrusted with law now roams lawless. Towering, draped in a tattered uniform, badge barely hanging from a rotting chest, the sheriff is not just a high-tier enemy. He's a walking relic of failed order. And in Dead Rails, he represents something more than just another undead threat. He's history, authority, collapsed. The sheriff zombie is among the more intelligent infected, not in terms of strategy or planning, but in how deliberately he acts. He doesn't wander aimlessly, he patrols, often seen walking loops through abandoned town segments of the map, especially near key loot locations or access routes. These are places players must pass through, and that's exactly where the sheriff waits. Unlike ironclads, who are brute force threats, the sheriff brings psychological weight. The way he moves is measured, imposing. His revolver, still gripped in a broken hand, no longer fires, but he'll use it to bash to signal, and in rare moments, to point. Yes, point. Some players report moments when the sheriff pauses, looks at them from across a corridor, and raises his rusted pistol. No sound, no shot, just warning. Then he moves on. The lore surrounding the sheriff is deep, especially among community theorists. He's often thought to be Sheriff Granger, mentioned in old loading screen newspaper clippings and in scattered lore entries. Granger was the last acting lawman of a rail-bound frontier town, once tasked with keeping peace between the military and mining workers during the early outbreak. When quarantine collapsed, he stayed behind. Some claim he executed those infected who begged for mercy. Others say he tried to protect them. But in either story, he didn't survive. His physical appearance is distinct. Worn leather duster, cracked star badge fused into chest bone, wide brim hat often partially melted into scalp from fire exposure. And those eyes, faintly glowing red, but not feral. Focused. Controlled. Like something still lingers. In combat, the sheriff is unlike other zombies. His melee attacks are punishing but deliberate. He uses a broken baton or his firearm as a blunt object. His AI is known for reading corners, changing patrols when players attempt to bait him. He doesn't rush. He isolates. Some players believe he can mark targets, that once he's seen you, even if you escape, you're on his list. There's a haunting sound cue, a low whistle, heard just before he reappears later in the map. It's not confirmed whether this is AI behavior or coincidence, but the effect is chilling. It feels like you're being hunted by a memory. And that's part of what makes him special. The sheriff doesn't feel like just another boss. He feels like he remembers, like he once stood for something and now he's stuck, enforcing a law that no longer exists against the living he once swore to protect. The deeper you go into the back rails, the more unsettling the sheriff becomes. He doesn't just stalk corridors anymore. He starts appearing in places where he shouldn't be, behind locked doors, near advanced puzzles, in zones where he wasn't coded to spawn, at least according to the game files if you believe the data miners. But somehow he's there, watching, waiting. In late game phases, the sheriff shows signs of escalation. His patrols become more erratic, his movements quicker, that once placid demeanor takes on a new layer. Desperation, maybe, or something worse, clarity. He stops warning, he starts striking first. Players caught in tight spaces often describe him bursting and suddenly shoulder checking them against walls, disabling their flashlights, and retreating just as quickly. A hit and run ghost in a dead man's badge. One of the more infamous features tied to the sheriff is what the community calls the last rites event. This is a rare occurrence, sometimes triggered during mid-high corruption levels in law-themed areas. Players report hearing the jingle of keys. A second later, the environment shifts. Lights flicker, a bell tolls in the distance, and a voice, broken, garbled deep, mutters a line like, "No more second chances." What follows is brutal. The sheriff hunts with precision, appearing from shadows or behind terrain that should be solid. He isolates the player with the lowest health and focuses exclusively on them. During this event, you cannot hide. He finds you. The only escape is through breaking line of sight and reaching a pardon zone, a small lit corner where the old sheriff station still flickers with power. If you make it there, he halts, holsters his weapon, turns, and walks away. Moments like these turn the sheriff from a simple elite enemy into something deeply narrative. It's as if he isn't just enforcing the infection, he's enforcing justice in his mind. Twisted, corrupted justice, the kind that doesn't understand time has moved on, that there are no laws left to uphold, no people left to protect, and yet the lore hints at something deeper. Some encrypted files, likely ARG related, show mugshots of early infected. In the bottom corner of one frame is a blurred figure in a duster, standing between two uninfected soldiers. That figure resembles the sheriff. Some believe this suggests he may have been involved in the early detainments. Others speculate he wasn't just a sheriff, but a warden, the last enforcer at a now buried rail prison, one that held those exposed to early infection experiments. The theory goes further. A specific piece of lore found on an abandoned cell door says he kept the key on him, always, until the end, said it was better that way. Sure enough, the sheriff zombie has a key ring model welded to his belt. No known use, but it's there. The fan base has turned him into a legend, a ghost lawman stuck in a loop, hunting criminals that no longer exist in a world where the only law is survival. Some players even say he has a name, Granger, Sheriff Elijah Granger, mentioned once in a loading screen scrap as someone who refused to run when the West Station burned. Dead Rails doesn't hand out exposition, it buries it. The sheriff's one of its best secrets. Part boss, part enigma, part memory of a time that tried and failed to keep the tracks safe. The scientist zombie is a haunting echo of curiosity turned to nightmare. Where others fell victim to the infection's blind rage, the scientist represents the dark fusion of intellect and decay. This entity is not just an infected survivor, it's a remnant of the minds that sought to control the outbreak, only to become its victims. In the abandoned labs and research outposts scattered along the Dead Rails map, players frequently encounter these grotesque figures. Clad in torn lab coats, their faces obscured by shattered goggles or gas masks, the scientist zombies move differently from others. They twitch, hesitate, sometimes appear to be examining objects, or what remains of them, in a disturbingly deliberate fashion. These creatures are rumored to be former researchers who were caught in early containment breaches. Logs found on corrupted terminals speak of desperate experiments, attempts to synthesize a cure, or at least slow the spread of infection. Yet the infection was cunning. It turned knowledge into madness. The scientist zombies' behavior reflects this warped legacy. They often emit faint mechanical noises, a cough interrupted by a sputtering breath, or the hum of damaged equipment fused into their bodies. Some are seen clutching shattered syringes or broken data pads, clutching to the last remnants of their mission even in undeath. Their attacks are less about brute force and more about chaos. They can emit toxic clouds, infecting nearby players with status effects that impair vision and slow movement. This suggests that the infection adapted, weaponizing its hosts to spread more efficiently. In some rare encounters, scientist zombies have been observed to coordinate with other infected types, hurting them, directing them toward player positions. This behavior hints at a possible higher cognitive function retained from their past selves, a grim reflection of their scientific minds trapped behind layers of decay. Moreover, fan theories delve into whether some scientist zombies were once willing participants in their own transformation, hoping to merge with the infection to transcend mortality. It's a chilling thought, minds so consumed by their pursuit of knowledge that they embraced oblivion for a chance at evolution. The scientist zombies' variations reveal even more about the grim fate of those trapped in Dead Rail's infected zones. Among them, the augmented scientist stands out. These creatures show evidence of experimental biomechanical enhancements, shattered neural implants, exposed circuitry fused with decaying flesh, and sometimes even glowing eyes pulsating with corrupted energy. In combat, the augmented scientist employs more aggressive tactics. They lob toxic vials that explode on impact, spreading corrosive clouds that degrade armor and slow movements. They can also summon swarms of smaller infected, known as lab rats, that harass players and disrupt their formations. This swarm mechanic introduces a unique challenge, forcing players to balance area control with direct combat. The lore suggests these augmented scientists were part of Project Helix, a last-ditch effort to weaponize the infection against hostile factions. Field reports found in-game mention the use of infected test subjects implanted with experimental tech to enhance aggression and resilience. But Project Helix failed catastrophically, the facility going dark and those involved becoming the very horrors players face. A more elusive variant is the Silent Scientist. Unlike its counterparts, it emits no sound, no cough or groan. Players often report a creeping sense of dread when one appears, as it stalks silently through the shadows. It strikes suddenly, injecting a toxic serum directly into victims with a rusted syringe, causing rapid infection and temporary blindness. The Silent Scientist is rare and often tied to hidden side quests or secret zones. Some speculate these zombies represent those who attempted to escape the infection by isolating themselves, but were ultimately consumed in silence. Further adding to the scientist zombie mythos is the presence of corrupted research logs scattered around the map. These documents, partially destroyed, hint at breakthroughs and failures. Some even suggest the infection may have a form of intelligence, responding and evolving based on human scientific attempts to study it. The scientist zombie then embodies this tragic cycle, curiosity breeding destruction, intellect twisted into horror. They serve as a reminder that in Dead Rails, knowledge is both power and curse. The soldier zombie is a stark reminder of the world before the rails fell silent. Clad in faded military fatigues, his tattered helmet slipping over a face frozen in an eternal grimace, he embodies the last desperate defense against an unstoppable tide. In Dead Rails, the soldier zombie is not just an enemy. He is a symbol of duty, corrupted, of orders drowned in decay. Once, these men and women answered the call of their nations, standing guard over rail lines critical for transportation and supply. When the infection spread, military units were among the first to mobilize, yet containment failed. The infected overwhelmed the camps, turning defenders into monsters. The soldier zombies are those lost defenders, trapped in undeath, forever bound to their last post. In the game's world, their presence marks military outposts, barricaded train stations, and supply depots, places where the military tried to hold the line. Their gear is battered, often smeared with rust and dried blood, relics of firefights lost to time. Players find remnants of their struggle scattered across these zones, spent shells, hastily scrawled orders, and in some cases, recordings of last transmissions. Static-laden voices pleading for reinforcements that never came. Behaviorally, soldier zombies are more disciplined than other infected types. Their AI shows tactical movement patterns. They take cover, attempt to flank, and use suppressive melee attacks. While they lack firearms, their training manifests in efficient, brutal melee strikes, bayonets, fists, or improvised clubs. They often coordinate in small groups, their pack tactics reflecting forgotten military drills. The lore around soldier zombies runs deeper. Early in the outbreak, military experiments attempted to weaponize the infection, creating controlled zombies to fight on their side. These experiments failed spectacularly, leading to catastrophic breaches. Some soldier zombies may be victims of these trials, their bodies augmented with crude cybernetic enhancements or chemical agents that failed to suppress the infection but altered their physiology. This augmentation is visible in some variants: mechanical limbs fused with flesh, glowing green veins from chemical injections, and in rare cases, a faint electrical hum emanating from exposed circuitry. These augmented soldier zombies are tougher, more aggressive, and serve as mini bosses in high level areas. They are often called Warden class among players, feared for their resilience and tactical acumen. From a gameplay perspective, encountering a soldier zombie signals a spike in difficulty. Players must adapt, using stealth and coordinated attacks to survive. The game's environmental storytelling around these zombies is rich: discarded dog tags bearing names and ranks, letters home describing hopes and fears, and faded propaganda posters urging soldiers to hold the rails. The soldier zombie's haunting presence reminds players of the cost of the outbreak, not just in lives lost, but in shattered duty and forgotten heroes. They blur the line between man and monster, duty and damnation. The soldier zombie is not merely a foe, it is a living testament to the tragic intersection of duty and despair. When the infection first gripped the rails, military forces scrambled to contain it, setting up fortified checkpoints and attempting to safeguard critical infrastructure. These men and women were trained for battle, equipped with weapons and discipline, but nothing could prepare them for the slow, creeping horror that overtook their ranks. Players entering zones marked by soldier zombie activity quickly noticed the remnants of desperate last stands. Crumpled bunkers, makeshift barricades, and abandoned supply crates tell stories of soldiers caught in the final hours. Here and there, bullet-ridden diaries and smudged photographs hint at lives interrupted. One journal entry, found deep within a collapsed command post, reads, "We hold the line for now, but the infection is relentless. I pray my family never hears of what happened here." These fragments of humanity deepen the player's connection to the world. The soldier zombies aren't just enemies, they are echoes of sacrifice. Mechanically, soldier zombies exhibit a chilling blend of raw aggression and tactical nuance. Unlike the mindless hordes that swarm without direction, these zombies move with a soldier's training etched into their decayed flesh. They use cover effectively, pause momentarily to assess threats, and coordinate with nearby infected to execute flanking maneuvers. When players face a squad of soldier zombies, it quickly becomes clear that brute force alone won't win the day. In some encounters, soldier zombies are equipped with remnants of their original weaponry, albeit broken or rusted beyond function. Yet their fighting style mirrors real-world military close-quarters combat. Bayonets lash out in stabbing motions, armored fists deliver bone-crushing blows, and when cornered they exhibit surprising bursts of speed, the last vestiges of adrenaline coursing through their undead veins. One of the more terrifying subtypes encountered is the Warden-class soldier zombie, a grotesque fusion of man and machine. These variants are the failed products of military bioengineering projects intended to harness the infection's power while maintaining control. Cybernetic implants protrude from their flesh, metal plates cover shattered ribs, mechanical servos replace shattered limbs, and glowing green veins pulse with chemical agents designed to suppress the virus, but instead amplify aggression. The Warden-class soldier zombies are more than just tougher enemies. They represent a moral failure. The militarized infection turned against its creators. Their presence in high-level zones signals danger. Players must employ advanced tactics and teamwork to survive. These creatures can shrug off standard attacks, requiring precise strikes to vulnerable points revealed only briefly during their aggressive assaults. Story-wise, the lore hints that the military's attempt to weaponize the infection was born from desperation and hubris. Classified documents found in hidden terminals reveal failed projects codenamed Ironclad and Helix, where infected soldiers were augmented with cybernetics and chemical enhancers. The results were catastrophic. Containment failures led to rapid spread, and entire bases were lost. Survivors' testimonies describe the horrors of watching comrades transform into these hybrid monstrosities. Um, This background enriches the soldier zombies narrative. They are not just victims, but symbols of a world that tried to control a force beyond comprehension. Their existence is a warning that the pursuit of power without wisdom can lead to ruin. For players, encountering soldier zombies is both a gameplay challenge and a narrative experience. Their disciplined aggression forces tactical thinking, while their tragic backstory adds emotional weight to each encounter. The silent question lingers. Were these soldiers truly lost to the infection, or did they choose their fate, fighting until their last breath to protect what little remained of humanity? As the rails continue to decay and darkness spreads, the soldier zombies stand as grim sentinels, guardians of a forgotten war, forever trapped between life and undeath, honor and horror. The executive banker zombie looms as a more unsettling evolution of the banker class, a creature warped not only by the infection, but also by the very environment of greed and power it once ruled. His torn suit is now soaked with grime and rot, and the briefcase he wields is transformed from a symbol of business acumen into a heavy, improvised weapon. Players who face this foe quickly realize that beneath the disheveled appearance lies a stubborn tenacity, making him a formidable opponent in close quarters combat. Despite the infection's ravaging effects, the executive banker retains a faint trace of cunning. He moves with deliberate purpose, often cornering players in tight spaces like abandoned boardrooms or cramped vault corridors. His attacks consist of swinging the briefcase with surprising force, followed by a choking grab intended to incapacitate. The slow, grinding sounds of his footsteps echo through deserted hallways, creating a palpable tension that heightens the player's sense of danger. What makes the executive banker especially dangerous is his resilience. Standard weapons can slow him, but only sustained focus or heavy firepower will bring him down. His presence forces players to think strategically. Dodging, timing counterattacks, and utilizing environmental hazards become crucial for survival. Adding to the menace is the faint background lore suggesting that some bankers attempted to leverage the outbreak for personal gain. Rumors in the game world speak of clandestine deals, betrayal, and greed-fueled desperation in the last days before society's collapse. It is said that some executive banker zombies were once powerful figures who hoarded resources and sealed themselves away in fortified offices, only to be consumed by the very avarice they embodied. Environmental storytelling enriches this narrative. Players can find scattered documents like financial ledgers with cryptic entries, hastily scribbled about asset transfers, and damaged personal diaries revealing anxiety and paranoia. These artifacts bring a human dimension to these monsters, suggesting that behind every zombie is a story of lost hope and hubris. Mechanically, encountering banker zombies alongside their automated defenses poses a unique challenge. Security drones and turrets, remnants of corporate greed and control, activate in these zones, creating layered threats. Players must manage both the slow, methodical advance of banker zombies and the relentless fire of mechanical guardians. These encounters often play out as tense tactical battles. Players use cover, exploit the environment, and prioritize threats carefully. The banker zombies may not be the fastest or most aggressive, but combined with technological hazards, they create deadly puzzles for players to solve. In summary, the banker zombie class embodies the decay of economic power and societal collapse. They stand as a reminder that no system, no matter how entrenched or powerful, can withstand the unstoppable spread of infection. Their slow, calculated menace contrasts sharply with other infected types, enriching the variety and depth of threats in Dead Rails. Captain Prescott is one of the most enigmatic figures haunting the rails of Dead Rails. Unlike the generic hordes of infected, he carries the weight of leadership and legacy, a man whose story intertwines with the history of the infection and the fate of the trains themselves. His name evokes respect and fear, a legend whispered among survivors and players alike. Prescott was a high-ranking officer in the railway security forces tasked with safeguarding the critical supply routes that kept civilization's fragile remnants connected. As the infection spread, he became a pivotal figure in the desperate efforts to maintain order, coordinating defenses, organizing evacuations, and leading counterattacks against the growing infected threat. In the game, Captain Prescott's presence is marked by heavily fortified train depots and command centers, areas dense with environmental storytelling. Players discover scattered notes, strategic maps, and recorded voice logs revealing Prescott's struggle to keep his people safe. His final transmissions are haunting, messages filled with determination, sorrow, and a grim acceptance of the coming collapse. The captain's infected form is distinct from the common zombie. Clad in a tattered but once proud uniform, he exudes an aura of command even in undith. His movements are deliberate and purposeful, far from the erratic thrashing of lesser infected. He carries a pistol or revolver, a rare example of a ranged infected enemy, and his attacks combine precision and brutality. Players face Captain Prescott as a mini-boss in certain high-level zones. His AI is advanced, capable of taking cover, using tactical retreat, and launching measured attacks that test player reflexes and strategy. Unlike mindless hordes, Prescott engages players with calculated aggression, forcing them to think and adapt. Lore hints that Prescott may have been infected during the initial outbreak, but refused to abandon his post until the very end. Some speculate that his infection progressed slower, allowing his tactical mind to persist longer than most. This makes him a tragic figure, a man caught between duty and inevitable transformation. His mini-boss fights often include phases, starting with ranged pistol fire and moving to brutal melee once players close the distance. He's known for using the environment to his advantage, retreating to vantage points or defensive cover while calling out orders that echo faintly in the surrounding radio static. The environment also suggests that Prescott was involved in early attempts to develop a cure or control method. Players can find broken vials, hastily written research notes, and diagrams hinting at biochemical experiments. This adds layers to his story, painting him as a man desperate to find a solution even as his world fell apart. Captain Prescott's legacy extends beyond combat. His name is etched in memorial plaques scattered throughout the rail stations, a solemn reminder of leadership lost to the infection. Survivors tell tales of his bravery and sacrifice, adding a human face to the relentless horrors of the dead rail's world. For players, confronting Captain Prescott is a test of skill and patience. His combination of ranged and melee combat, tactical intelligence, and the haunting narrative woven into his presence make him a memorable and challenging foe. Captain Prescott's story in Dead Rails is not merely that of a powerful adversary. It is the embodiment of leadership's final stand in a world overrun by darkness. To truly appreciate the weight he carries, one must delve into both the gameplay mechanics that make his encounters challenging and the rich lore that surrounds him. When players first encounter Captain Prescott, the atmosphere shifts palpably. The environment is no longer just a backdrop, but a character itself. The dimly lit train depot, littered with broken equipment, scattered papers, and faint echoes of distant footsteps, tells a story of a once thriving hub now fallen to ruin. The air is thick with tension and silence, broken only by the crackling static of malfunctioning radios and Prescott's distant commands, etched forever in time. His design reflects the duality of his existence, a man caught between duty and decay. His uniform, once immaculate and authoritative, is now ragged and stained. The insignia of rank remains visible, a stark reminder of the man he was. His eyes, clouded with infection, still burn with a faint glimmer of determination. This design choice grounds him in reality, making him feel more like a tragic hero than a mere monster. Combat with Captain Prescott is divided into multiple phases, each testing different player skills and strategies. Initially, he engages with precision-ranged attacks. Unlike most infected, Prescott uses a pistol, taking cover behind crates and overturned desks, shooting with calculated bursts. His AI is programmed to simulate tactical behavior, retreating when under heavy fire, coordinating brief pauses to reload, and moving unpredictably to flank the player. This phase requires players to maintain situational awareness, use cover effectively, and time their own attacks carefully. But the real challenge begins when Prescott switches to close quarters combat. As players close the distance, the pistol is discarded, and the captain draws a rusted yet still deadly combat knife. This phase is brutal. His attacks are swift and precise, mimicking real-life military close combat techniques. He uses a combination of slashes, stabs, and grab design to punish mistakes harshly. Players must dodge with impeccable timing, counterattack quickly, and maintain stamina. One unique mechanic during this melee phase is Prescott's use of the environment. He can knock over shelves to create temporary barriers, slam players against walls for heavy damage, or retreat into small alcoves to catch his breath, forcing players to pursue carefully and not overcommit. This interplay turns the encounter into a tense dance where aggression and caution must be balanced. Beyond mechanics, the lore surrounding Prescott adds emotional depth to the fight. In collectible audio logs scattered throughout the depot, Prescott's voice reveals a man burdened by the collapse of everything he fought to protect. His tone shifts from confident command to desperate resolve as the infection spreads. One log, recorded during a critical supply run, captures his fear and hope. If this message survives, know that we did everything to hold the line. The rails must keep running, for the sake of those still waiting beyond the darkness. Another log details his final moments, describing a failed mission to rescue survivors trapped beyond a quarantined zone. His voice cracks as he recounts losing comrades to the infection, pleading for reinforcements that never arrived. These recordings humanize Prescott, elevating him from a boss fight to a tragic figure caught in the apocalypse. The game also weaves in subtle hints that Prescott's infection was gradual. Unlike other infected who succumbed quickly, he retained his tactical mind longer, enabling him to organize defenses even as his body deteriorated. This gradual descent is symbolized by changes in his behavior during combat. Earlier phases show measured tactics, while later phases reveal moments of rage and desperation, as if the infection is breaking down his will. Players who explore hidden areas can find evidence of Prescott's attempts to develop a cure or control the infection. Medical notes, chemical vials, and schematic diagrams suggest a collaboration between railway scientists and military personnel striving to contain the outbreak. These items hint at a lost hope, a last-ditch effort to save humanity that ultimately failed. This subplot enriches the narrative, showing that Prescott's fight was not only physical, but also scientific. The captain's impact extends beyond his immediate zone. His name appears in survivor diaries found throughout the game world, where NPC characters mention his bravery and leadership. Some survivors credit Prescott with buying them time to escape, while others mourn his loss, lamenting that the last beacon of order fell with him. This social context deepens the player's immersion, framing Prescott as a legend rather than just a monster. From a player's perspective, the fight against Captain Prescott is designed to be memorable and multifaceted. It demands mastery of both ranged and melee combat, situational awareness, and strategic thinking. The gradual escalation from tactical shooter to brutal close combat keeps tension high and prevents the encounter from feeling repetitive. Moreover, Prescott's AI includes adaptive elements. He occasionally taunts players with radio-static phrases, attempts to predict player movement, and can even feign retreats to lure players into traps. These behaviors make the fight dynamic and challenging, rewarding patience and tactical ingenuity. In terms of difficulty, the Prescott encounter is positioned as a climactic event in the Dead Rails storyline. It serves as a benchmark for player progression, requiring upgraded weapons, armor, and mastery of game mechanics. Defeating him grants significant rewards, rare loot, unique cosmetic items, and story-critical keys that unlock deeper game areas. Narratively, Prescott's death is a turning point. It symbolizes the fall of organized resistance and the complete descent into chaos. Yet, it also marks the beginning of new chapters, where players must face the infected hordes without the guiding hand of leadership. His legacy lingers, a bittersweet reminder of the cost of survival. In conclusion, Captain Prescott is far more than a boss fight. He is a carefully crafted character, blending gameplay challenge with deep storytelling. His presence enriches the Dead Rails world, offering players not just a test of skill, but a connection to the tragic humanity behind the infection. Facing him is confronting the past, the collapse of order, and the enduring struggle to keep hope alive on the rails.